Your life isn't broken. It's just built on the wrong instructions. You wake up tired, you fix your schedule, you try harder, sleep less, hustle more, still tired, still behind, still waiting for the version of your life that feels lighter, and it never quite arrives. Here's the quiet suspicion you've probably had for years. The problem was never you. It was the blueprint you were handed, a Western one, built on more, faster, louder, now. And there's a country that never picked up that blueprint at all. Japan looked at the same human problems, exhaustion, clutter, self-doubt, restlessness, and answered every single one differently. Not louder, quieter. Not more, less done well. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the West got so much of this wrong, and why Japan, centuries ago, already got it right. Stay with me, because this list gets uncomfortable fast. Number 3 will challenge something you've been told your whole life is a virtue. Not a flaw, a virtue. Number 7 might feel almost rude. It contradicts advice you've probably read in 100 self-help books. And yet, Japan has quietly known better for generations. And number 10, save your judgment for that one. It ties every single item before it into one idea. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Most people in the West never realize how many of their daily habits are working against them. Not because they're lazy, not because they're undisciplined, because they inherited a system that was never built for peace. So stay until the end, because the last piece of this isn't just interesting. It's the one idea that makes everything else finally make sense. Number 1, busyness. In the West, being busy is practically a personality trait. Someone asks how you're doing, and busy comes out before you even think about it. A packed calendar feels like proof that you matter, that you're needed, that you're living a full life. But underneath that pride, there's exhaustion. Real exhaustion, the kind that doesn't go away with a weekend off, because the identity itself depends on staying full. In Japan, there's a completely different relationship with empty time. Silence between conversations isn't awkward. A blank hour in the schedule isn't wasted. Space itself is treated as valuable, not as something to be filled the moment it appears. This comes from a concept called ma. Ma means negative space, the power of emptiness, silence, and pauses. In traditional Japanese design, a room isn't beautiful because of what's filled it. It's beautiful because of what's left open. Most people in the West never realize that rest isn't the reward for productivity. It's the thing that makes productivity possible at all. You were never lazy for needing a pause. You were just never given permission to take one. And if busyness isn't proof of worth, what happens when the things you own start making the same false promise? Number 2, perfectionism. In the West, flawless is the goal. The spotless home, the unlined face, the career with no gaps, no missteps, no visible cracks. Anything less feels like falling behind, like something to hide or fix before anyone notices. So the chase never really ends. There's always a newer version, a smoother finish, a better before and after waiting just out of reach. In Japan, there's a different eye for beauty entirely. A cracked teacup, repaired with gold instead of hidden, becomes more valuable, not less. A weathered wooden beam is left rough on purpose. Age isn't something to erase, it's something to honor. This comes from Wabi-Sabi. Wabi-Sabi means finding peace and beauty in imperfection and simplicity. It's the belief that nothing is ever finished, nothing is ever perfect. And that's exactly where the beauty lives. But here's what nobody talks about. Chasing flawless doesn't make you feel accomplished. It makes you feel like you're never quite done. Your lines, your cracks, your unfinished edges were never the problem. They were just proof that you're still here, still living, still becoming. And if imperfection can be beautiful, what does that mean for the noise you've been using to avoid sitting with yourself? Number 3. Noise. In the West, silence feels like something's wrong. A quiet car ride gets filled with a podcast. A quiet room gets filled with the TV. Even a quiet moment alone gets filled with scrolling because stillness, for most people, feels less like peace and more like a problem waiting to happen. In Japan, silence carries a completely different weight. In conversation, a pause isn't something to rush past. It's often a sign of respect, space given so the other person's words can settle before anything else is added. This connects to something called chinmoku. Chinmoku means silence, and in Japanese culture, it's treated as meaningful communication in its own right, not an absence of it. Saying nothing at the right moment can say more than words ever could. And if you're watching this, you already know what I mean. You felt that itch to fill a quiet moment with your phone just to avoid sitting inside it. That itch isn't peace, it's avoidance wearing peace's clothes. But what we're about to cover next, most people in the West have never even considered, because it has nothing to do with silence and everything to do with how you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. Number 4. How you talk to yourself. In the West, the fix for low confidence is usually more praise. Say it in the mirror, write it on a sticky note, tell yourself you're enough, over and over until it sticks. And for a moment, it can feel good, right up until life challenges it and the affirmation doesn't hold. In Japan, confidence is built a different way, not through repeated praise, but through quiet, honest self-examination, looking clearly at your own actions without flattery and without harshness, and simply asking what's true. This comes from a practice called Nikon. Nikon is a Japanese self-reflection method built around 3 quiet questions. What have I received? What have I given? And what troubles have I caused? It isn't about self-esteem, it's about self-honesty. Most people in the West never realize that confidence built on constant praise is fragile because it depends on the praise continuing. Confidence built on honest reflection doesn't need an audience. It doesn't even need agreement. It just needs the truth, looked at calmly, without flinching. And once you stop needing to feel good about yourself every minute, something interesting happens to how you treat everyone else around you. Number 5. Whose happiness comes first? In the West, the advice is almost always the same. Put yourself first. Set your boundaries. Your happiness is your responsibility, and no one else's. It's meant to be empowering, and sometimes it is. But taken too far, it can quietly turn into isolation dressed up as self-care. In Japan, well-being is measured differently, not by how well you stand apart from others, but by how well you fit within them. A good life isn't one lived in isolation from the group. It's one lived in balance with it. This comes from a concept called wa. Wa means harmony, the idea that peace comes not from individual triumph, but from smooth, respectful connection between people. Your well-being and the group's well-being aren't separate goals. They're the same goal. The rest of the world missed this entirely. Constant self-focus doesn't actually make people feel more secure. It often makes them feel more alone, because connection gets treated as optional instead of essential. You were never meant to carry your happiness by yourself. You were meant to hold it alongside other people. And once you see how connection works, the next thing might surprise you, because it's not about people at all. It's about your things. Number 6. What you do when something breaks. In the West, the answer is usually simple. Replace it. A phone with a cracked screen, a shirt with a loose thread, a chair with a wobble. It's often easier and cheaper to just buy new. Waste becomes background noise, barely noticed, because the whole system is built to make replacing feel normal. In Japan, there's a word for the discomfort that waste is supposed to cause: Mottainai. Mottainai means a sense of regret over waste, the instinct to use something fully, repair it, honor it before ever letting it go. It's not about being frugal, it's about respect for the object itself and the effort it took to make it. Before we go further, if any of this is landing, take a moment right now. Look around the room you're in. Notice one thing you were about to replace that maybe just needs a little care instead. Most people in the West never realize how much quiet anxiety comes from constantly discarding and replacing. Every new purchase promises relief, and every promise runs out a little faster than the last one. Mottainai isn't about having less, it's about actually valuing what you already have. And that same respect for objects, for effort, for time shows up again in the next item, in a place you'd never expect to find it, your own daily habits. Number 7. This is the one I told you might feel almost rude. In the West, everything is a hack. 5-minute fixes, 10-day transformations, shortcuts promising the results of years delivered in a weekend. And when the shortcut doesn't work, the instinct isn't to slow down, it's to find a faster one. In Japan, there's a craftsman who has made the exact same dish, the exact same way for over 50 years. Not because he couldn't innovate, because he chose depth over speed and never once saw that as a limitation. This is the spirit of shokunin. Shokunin means the spirit of a craftsman, mastery earned through total devotion to one thing, practiced patiently for as long as it takes. There's no hack for that. There was never supposed to be one. You've been living with this pressure for years, believing that if something takes a long time, you're doing it wrong. Japan solved this centuries ago by deciding that time isn't the enemy of mastery, it's the ingredient. This is the one idea that makes everything else on this list actually work. Because rest, imperfection, silence, reflection, harmony, none of it happens overnight either. And neither does what's coming next. Number 8, how you handle what you can't control. In the West, the message is relentless. Never give up. Fight for the outcome. If you just push hard enough, want it badly enough, you can bend circumstance to your will. And when you can't, it often feels like personal failure, rather than simply the limits of what one person can control. In Japan, there's a different response to hardship, not surrender and not resignation, but a clear-eyed acceptance of what genuinely cannot be changed, paired with quiet endurance of what still must be lived through. This shows up in 2 ideas: shogunai, which means it cannot be helped, a release, not a defeat, and gamen, which means enduring the unavoidable with patience and dignity, rather than fighting it uselessly. And this is the part that changes how you see everything else. Fighting what cannot be changed doesn't make you stronger. It just makes the hardship last longer, because now you're carrying the struggle and the resistance to it. Acceptance isn't giving up on your life. It's finally putting your energy where it can actually do something. Save the next 2 for last, because once you see them together, you'll understand why nothing on this list works in isolation. Number 9. In the West, being questioned usually triggers the same reflex. Explain yourself, defend your choice, prove in detail why you were right, even when the moment probably didn't call for a defense at all. Being misunderstood feels almost unbearable, so words rush in to fix it. In Japan, accountability often looks completely different, quieter, less public. Someone might make a mistake and simply correct it, without a speech, without justification, without needing anyone else to agree they've made things right. This connects to hansei. Hansei means honest self-reflection after a mistake, focused on quiet correction rather than public defense. The goal isn't to be understood, the goal is to actually do better. Most people in the West never realize how much energy goes into being seen as right, energy that could go into simply being better instead. Explaining yourself feels like accountability, but often it's just a more polished form of avoiding it. You don't owe everyone your reasoning, you owe yourself your growth. And that quiet, private kind of correction is about to connect to something even bigger, the way Japan looks at your entire life, from beginning to end. Number 10, the one I asked you to save your judgment for. In the West, aging is treated almost like a failure to prevent. Every wrinkle gets a product. Every birthday gets a joke about dreading the next one. Mortality sits at the edge of every conversation, rarely named directly, because naming it feels too heavy to hold. In Japan, there's a gentler relationship with impermanence. Cherry blossoms are celebrated most not despite their brief bloom, but because of it. Their beauty is inseparable from how quickly they fall. This is mono no aware. Mono no aware means the gentle awareness of impermanence, finding beauty in things precisely because they don't last. It isn't sadness for its own sake, it's tenderness toward life, made sharper by the knowledge that it ends. What they discovered might surprise you. Denying that things end doesn't protect you from the ending, it just steals the tenderness you could have felt along the way. And here's the part that ties everything together. The reason I asked you to hold this one until last. Every single item on this list, the rest, the imperfection, the silence, the reflection, the harmony, the mastery, the acceptance, the quiet correction, none of it makes sense without knowing that time is short and worth spending gently. Here's the part that changes everything. Look back at everything you just heard. Rest instead of constant busyness, imperfection instead of flawlessness, silence instead of noise, honest reflection instead of empty praise, harmony instead of isolation, care instead of waste, mastery instead of shortcuts, acceptance instead of resistance, quiet correction instead of defense, tenderness instead of denial. None of these arrived overnight. None of them came from one dramatic overhaul, one extreme reset, one all-or-nothing transformation. They came from small, consistent adjustments, repeated so quietly and so often that they eventually became simply how life was lived. This is Kaizen. Kaizen means the practice of continuous, tiny improvements every day. Not a leap, a step, then another step tomorrow, small enough to seem unremarkable, and yet large enough, over years, to change everything. You've been living for years believing change had to be big to matter. Japan solved this centuries ago by proving that small is not the lesser path. It's simply the only one that actually lasts. You don't need to overhaul your life this week. You need one small adjustment, chosen honestly, repeated tomorrow. That's not a smaller way of changing your life. It's the only way that's ever really worked. If any of this landed, even one small piece of it, sit with that for a moment before you close this video. You didn't need 10 new rules to memorize. You needed permission to stop chasing a version of life that was never built for peace in the first place. Japan didn't invent anything complicated here. It simply chose differently, centuries ago, and kept choosing that way, quietly, one generation at a time. If this gave you even one thing to think about differently, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's tired in that specific way that more effort never seems to fix. This might be exactly what they needed today. And subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the quiet wisdom Japan has been living for centuries. Not louder answers, truer ones. Your life isn't broken. It never was. You don't need a new blueprint. You just need to stop following the wrong one.